Good morning and welcome to Dispatch at IETF 123. We have, it's a combined meeting with SEC Dispatch, and we have the two chairs of Dispatch, Shu Ping Peng and myself, Jim Fenton, and the chairs of SEC Dispatch, Rafat and Daniel Gilmore. And there's Daniel, who was remote today. So thank you all for attending. Let's get started here. And of course, we're going to start with the note well, which we're going to pay a little more attention to than we do in a lot of our sessions because this is the very first one. The note well, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, is a reminder of IETF policies, particularly with respect to things like intellectual property rights and that sort of thing. Information, also privacy information. If you have not read this, if you're not already very familiar with this, you really should read this and the reference documents, which of course will take a little while to read. Note the note well. And there is now also a note really well, which deals largely with anti-harassment procedures and guidelines. It's a reminder that we do have an ombuds team that handles any sort of issues with participant behavior and that sort of thing. So if you have some concerns in that area, please reach out to the one of the ombuds persons, and they will work with you on that. This session, of course, is being recorded. Please, if you're in the room here, sign in with Data Tracker. I guess the QR code has been overcome by the slides at this point, but sign in with Data Tracker and join the session. Use Meet Echo Lite if you're in the room here typically, or Meet Echo if you're remote. Please keep your audio and video turned off so we don't have feedback and extraneous stuff on the screens. Yeah, for remote participants, make sure your audio and video are turned off unless you're actually presenting or chairing or commenting or that sort of thing. So here's pointers to the meeting agenda and all of that, which you probably have found already, I hope. And of course, what we're here to do is not to discuss any of the work that's being presented in detail, but just to give a very top-level overview in order to help us answer the question, the dispatch question, which is the purpose of this session. How might this work be handled in IETF? And here are some of the options. Existing working group might be within their charter, might have a new working group, hold a BOF, AD sponsored, or whether it just requires more discussion or maybe doesn't belong in IETF at all. One of the things I'd like to remind everyone is that dispatch is a service. It's not a requirement of the IETF process. If you're bringing new work to IETF, then you're welcome to shop it to an existing working group if you think you know where it belongs. Talk to area directors, that sort of thing. Dispatch is really an area for proposals that need some help in deciding where they ought to go, but it's not required that you come to dispatch with new work at all. You have something else? Elliot, do you have a comment?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. First, and thanks, Jim. Just one little advertisement here. Indeed, sometimes work is not appropriate for the IETF. Now, there are many reasons that could be. In certain cases, and I can't enumerate them here, but in certain cases, it may be appropriate still as an RFC, but through the independent submissions process, or maybe work needs to go to the IRTF. Sometimes dispatch will make those recommendations, but individuals are welcome to contact the independent submissions editor if they believe that the work is still appropriate as an RFC. Just a caution, the hit rate is low. Most people don't get through the independent submissions process, but if you're interested, you can feel free to email rfc-ice@rfceditor.org, and I'll stick that in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And who would that independent submissions editor be, Elliot?
Oh, at the very moment, it's me. But that comment transcends whoever it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just so that people know who they're talking to.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks for that reminder, Elliot. And here's our agenda. We have as usual, we have a fairly tight agenda. We want to try and keep the presentations to 10 minutes, which would normally be 5 minutes of actual presentation and 5 minutes of discussion from participants in the room and remotely. So we'll try and keep it to that as closely as possible, just so that we don't run over the later portions of the presentation. Anything else from you guys?
No, we're good.
Okay. So our first presentation today is Open Cloud Mesh from Giuseppe Lopresti, and I'm afraid I'm spacing on the name of your co-presenter. And so with these presentations coming up, I'd like to have, especially if you're in the room here, please get ready to come on up, even kind of like sit next to the stairway to the stage here, so that we can move quickly from presentation to presentation.
Okay, I present myself.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's start then. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Giuseppe. I'm from CERN in Geneva. And
my name is Micke Nordin. I work at Sunet in Sweden. Yeah, let's see. Yes. So, do we have a clicker or? I will just ask someone to click
as the
next slide.
As the first presentation of the day, I'm not sure we found the clicker yet, so I will happily move the slides for you.
Thank you. Yeah, so Open Cloud Mesh is a dating protocol between computers. So it's meant to establish a federation of cloud storage sites that we call nodes. And it is currently mostly used for users to share their institutional data and collaborate with others. But it could be any kind of cloud storage system, really. And it enables storage servers to advertise and discover capabilities. It has some similarities maybe with other kind of protocols like ActivityPub, and we also build on top of WebDAV and HTTP SIG, and some similarities also with OAuth. It's simple for users, and it bakes in some security features which makes it so that organizations want to use it and ensures data sovereignty for the organizations. So currently we have some implementations that Giuseppe will present, and it's also adopted by the European Open Science Cloud initiative. So we have already users in the millions, and some government organizations and a lot of research institutions using it. So, yeah, next slide.
Yeah, so indeed, this is actually an initiative that started already about 10 years ago. And currently, this is hosted as part of what we call the CS3 community, which I kind of represent here. This was a community born at CERN and then bringing together what we call the cloud storages. So the sync and share platforms for storage, indeed. And there are indeed a number of implementations. So here I'm listing a few logos just to give an idea. It's not an enormous amount. It's really a handful after all. But indeed, we are in the range of already millions of users and several, even tens of petabytes of data shared by those systems that are actually kind of enabled to be federated this way. So next. So here, the two of us actually, we kind of represent the team of developers for those systems. In particular, I developed Sandbox, which is the cloud storage we use at CERN. Mika develops Nextcloud, that is what they use at SUNET. And we have regular meetings, so this is already a kind of a healthy community that we have. So I've put here a number of references, and we can already go even to the last. I think I have one more slide on exactly where we are. So also to give a bit, so all of this, of course, we manage it in GitHub. We tagged a version like yesterday, so that we're working on it as we speak, kind of, and we are learning. Actually, yesterday was a very good learning exercise. What we need to do to make it to make it ready, let's say, for wider adoption. And final slide, indeed, what's next? We think that the specification is ready to start the proper standardization process by IETF. To the best of our knowledge, we don't have any IPR issue with it. And the question indeed is what to do next in the sense of, I mean, we understand that having an ID-sponsored publication is probably not a good fit because it's not such a small draft. So then we are really open to questions to see a little bit whether there is a working group, maybe around the WebDAV, because we are building on top of WebDAV, or anyway, around the application area somehow, or whether we have to propose a new working group and then we have to go for something else. So that's why we are here, in fact. So thanks for your attention, and I'm happy to see. There we go. We have the. Well, yes, okay. That would be for the next, or if we need to go back to some other slides. Thanks.
Okay, I will channel one question from the chat session. How about change control? If this is already adopted, is this something that IETF has a possibility of influencing the development of, or is this something that IETF is being asked to basically endorse?
So maybe I can answer that. So indeed, I mean, we are aware that if we go into that, there could be changes and even important changes. Now, the advantage is that the number of implementations is really a handful, and we control them. We have direct contact with the vendors, so we are ourselves the developers. So I'm not afraid of breaking the compatibility if there is a better advantage. For example, even recently, we changed something because from a security posture, it was actually not good. And okay, we deprecated the old behavior, and fine. I mean, this is part of life. So I don't see an issue with changes being proposed for the best.
I mean, in fact, we are coming to IETF because we want to make the specification better and want your input. So that's why we're here.
Okay, so I see Eckers in the queue. Go ahead.
Hi, Eric Scorla. Thanks for the presentation. I think I'm a little still unclear on what this thing does. You said dating, but it wasn't quite evocative enough for me. Could you like maybe give me a concrete example of when I would use this?
So I can answer. So we have different cloud storage solutions. So imagine you have an account on Google Drive, let's say, and someone else has an account on Dropbox, and you want to share data with the person in Dropbox. Currently, that doesn't work for them because they're walled gardens. But with our solution, if they could adopt Open Cloud Mesh, and you could share a folder or a file or an application even with the user of the other system. So that's what you can do with Nextcloud. You can share to OwnCloud or OpenCloud or to CernBox or something like that.
So in this instance, Dropbox and Google Cloud would have to adopt Open Cloud Mesh?
If they want to use it, of course.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I think the predicate question is how many people who operate systems like this are interested? And I think the best way to discover that is to have a buff. Thank you.
Yeah. So we already have a lot of installations and users. So one thing that's important to mention is that like the European Open Science Cloud has opted to use OCM in their tender. So if you want to be able to join, you have to support the protocol, and some German German institutions and a lot of German Bundesländer has adopted it, and indeed CERN, and we have
we have a number of yes, there is also a number of research institutes. So okay, this crosses also research and in general institutional data, I would call it. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Next person in the queue is Lars Eggert.
Hi, I'm back here in the cheap seats. Thanks for bringing this here. So two quick comments. One is about IPR. I guess you want to say that you're not aware of any IPR existing on the specification rather than that there are no issues, because whether there's issues remains for the IETF to decide. The second bit, I want to dig down a little bit deeper. You said like you want to bring it here and you're looking for input from the IETF. So that's not what we do, right? So you bring it here and we take it. And then it's ours, and we can do whatever we want. And I guess the question is, are you okay with that?
I think we are, yes, in the sense of, I mean, this is indeed for the benefit of a wider adoption. So, yes.
Okay, so I just want to make clear, right? So it's not like you bring it here, we give you input, you go away. So great. If you want to bring it here and it's ours, let's talk.
Yes.
I mean, we are hoping to come here and be part of the IETF.
Okay, next person in the queue is Kathleen.
Good morning. So as efforts like this in the past were most successful when they had vendors, representative in this space who would collaborate. And I say this as somebody who used to work at EMC, and the person before me used to work at NetApp. So vendors wanting to keep their storage locked in is a thing. However, customers are asking for open standards more and more. So if you're able to get that kind of collaboration for a BOF, it would be more successful.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. Yes, it's true that the vendors with whom we have contacts, those are small size or medium size. This is not the hyperscalers, let's say. So they are more open for this because they see the advantage more than disadvantage of losing contacts, let's say. So yes, this is definitely a good point. Thanks.
Great. And the final person in the queue is Jean-Francois.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions or one kind of clarifications. So you were mentioning about the impossibility at the moment to be able to move information between different storage providers, which I would push back a little bit on that, because if I have my Google Drive agent on my Windows and I also have my Box one, I can actually do the transfer between them. I understand that your position is that you would want not to have to depend on a specific implementation for an OS to those solution storages to do the bridging between them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. It's more like also imagine that because like your institution demands you to run only Google Drive, like by policy. So you cannot have two of them. You have only one, and then you still want to collaborate with someone else that has a different system. So then the only way would be that server to server, you have this way to do the federation on the server side, not on the client.
Yeah, so in a situation where you would have 25 different storage providers, you would probably have to have 25 different clients of each one of them to be able to move things across, which is a bit of a...
Which is, yeah, it's a bit
not
of a
ideal.
hassle,
Yeah,
course.
I agree.
So
the second thing is, have you thought about value proposition as to how you're going to be convincing those storage providers? What would be in for them?
Sorry, can you repeat the boundary conditions about?
No, value proposition. What would be the benefit of the gain? Have you made a list, or do you have an argument towards them as to why would they want to stop their wall gardening, but basically?
Well, for the providers themselves, or the vendors,
Yeah.
their advantage would be a wider adoption of their own solution if this allows federation with other collaborators. Of course, this is kind of at odds with the case of say the big hyperscalers, which then they typically say, okay, everybody gets an account, and you don't need to have this kind of federation. But here the scope is again institutional data, where the institution decides the provider, not the client, not the final user. So eventually the final user has to just use what is given by the institution. And then if the institution can choose a provider that also allows this kind of federation, then that provider has an advantage. Then this becomes the competitive advantage for the provider.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're about out of time for this presentation. It sounds also from the chat here like the direction seems to be to hold a BOF session, probably working group forming, because there's also some interest in moving in that direction. But a lot of the questions to be answered have to do with trying to determine what the traction would be with the vendors that you're trying to attract with this.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, thank you very much. Brian, did you have a quick comment?
I was just going to say we have NFSV for us, an active working group in the file storage space. Is there anything to look at there? Is it worth speaking to those chairs and trying not to duplicate the work?
NFS is and can be used as a storage for the OCM server, but there's not much overlap with the federation part and file sharing and things like that. But if we can find a working group that is willing to accept us, we're very happy to go there. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next presentation is RFC 4130 specification update from Deborah Petta, who is remote. And Deborah, do you want me to share your slides, or are you going to do that from there?
If you want to do it, that'd be great. And then I'll just say next slide when we move forward. Is that okay?
Works for me.
Great. All right. As we said, I'm Deborah Petta, and I'm from Drummond Group. We provide a service for vendors for AS2 to make sure that their implementations are interoperable. And so we work a lot with this RFC, and this is the RFC that we point developers and new development to as the specification that they use. And so when there's an issue, we go back to the specification and say, well, this is how the specification says it should be done. But what's happened is that over the years, AS2 has evolved so much, and new features have been added. Currently RFC wants to use Triple DES and SHA-1, which both have been deprecated because they're no longer secure. We generally now use SHA-2 and AES as the algorithms, or the preferred algorithms, and that's what the developers and the industry is really asking for. So as I said, there's new features that have been added, but they're not in the specification currently. I've spoken with a lot of the vendors who use this, and they're like, well, why hasn't our RFC 4130 been updated? So that's why we've taken the initiative now to really start working with these vendors and seeing if we can get their wish list of things into the RFC 4130, so that not only users who we work with, but users in general have a more mature or a better RFC to work off of. So that's our motivation for making changes to the current RFC specification to bring it into the 21st century. Next slide, please. So as I've already said, the new implementations rely on it, and because it no longer contains what is currently being used, it has really lost its lost its impact as the specification to be used. As I said, we need to update the references to secure algorithms, include the new features that are currently being used by the industry, clarify some ambiguities that we see when different vendors have implemented it, and guide on the best practices so that participants, as I said, who use Drummond as their QA process, or those who don't use it, that those products are all interoperable out in the world. Next slide, please. This is just a quick summary of the needed changes that we see and that we've talked to with the vendors. As I said, it's the algorithms. Currently, the AS2 has evolved from AS1, so the RFC 4130 talks about AS1 a lot. There's encodings that are used for AS1, which is really the same product but over SMTP. So we don't need to be talking about SMTP. This is all done over HTTP. We do talk to participants who no longer just want to use HTTP, they want to go over SSL, so HTTPS. So we want to have the specification talk more about the best practices for using HTTPS, the different, no longer using SSL version 3 or any of the SSL versions because they're insecure. So at minimum, we would say in the specification that it should use TLS 1.2 or better. Different clarifications for the headers that are used in the envelope of the message that's being sent. So it's a MIME header and then body. We have different headers that have been added that are not in the spec. We want those added in. And then the different features that have been added since. SEM is certificate exchange messaging, which a lot of our vendors ask for, and there's really no reference in there to it. Reliability is another of the different, one of the extra add-ons that have been added. Adding in multi-part attachments, file name preservation, which is just simply adding in the name of the file that's being sent over as part of the content type header. This has already all been implemented, but it's not stated in the spec. And then also in the spec, there's several examples, but they're not up to date as well. So these are some of the changes that we'd like to see in there. There's a very, very, very detailed list that I did send out to the group, I think the AD group and the dispatch group, of the things that we have talked to as an internal advisory group. And so that's really what we would be putting forth within the updated spec. Next slide, please. So the current and expected interest, as I said, there's large vendors who are already using RFC 4130. Those are just a few of the examples. Amazon AWS, IBM, Oracle, there's others, Xway, Clio, CData, several that we work with. I'm sure there's others out there that we don't work with, but the current version of RFC 4130 isn't up to date, and that's what we really want to ask for. As I said, we've got an internal advisory group. We'd like to bring that advisory group into the online community, the IETF community, and get all of the current wish lists, get wish lists from participants who don't interact with Drummond Group, to get everybody together, talk about things that we like to see in the updated RFC, and get those out there into the internet community. So next slide, please. So our hoped dispatch output, there currently is an EDI and working group, but because RFC 4130 is an RFC, that working group has closed. We'd like to either see the EDI working group reopened, or have an EDI 2 or an AS2 working group, or something that everybody can come to and get all that information out there so we can update the RFC. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Open for comments. Colin is first.
Colin James, thank you for that presentation. I think that was extremely compelling that we need to go do this work. Perhaps it should be secure dispatch instead of this, but I was just hoping maybe a security AD might be able to comment on what would be the best path forward of getting this done. I think most of the other dispatch questions are pretty obviously a thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Harold.
Harald Alderstrom. I happened to be IETF chair at the time of the original AS2 work. And at that time, it was definitely a community that parachuted into the IETF, did good work, and then parachuted out. I am not sure that we can successfully get you to parachute in again and perhaps stay a bit longer this time. And this could either be individual submission from you as a group, or it could be a reopening of an EDI and BIS working group. Either would work, but it was a bit of a cuckoo in a nest the first time. I would like to have your thoughts about how to avoid that same problem this time.
I worked for another company that did AS2 back in 2000. That's when I started working with AS2 myself. And I think I joined that EDI working group, but it was after the fact. I'm not sure. I think, did that start in 1999 maybe, or a little bit earlier than that? So it was a little before my time. So I don't know all the specifics, and I wasn't involved with the writing of the current spec. I implemented using that spec, and I found it helpful that it was there. I don't know. I actually used Drummond Group as I came to Drummond Group to do my certification as well, to make my product interoperable with the others. Walmart was a big proponent of using a certification body, and that is Drummond Group. And now I know I came from a different company. I do now work for Drummond Group, and that's why I want to keep this moving forward. Rick Drummond was one of the original writers of RFC 4130. So I'm just trying to move that also forward. I think that we could get a lot of the companies who were part of the old working group to come back and talk about it, because we do have a lot of requests for updating this RFC. So that's why I thought if we had something where there was a working group, we can bring people from, we can point them. I mean, we could put it together ourselves and just do it, but then it's not out in the real world for those who aren't part of Drummond.
Okay, thank you. We're running short on time.
Okay.
Robert Moskowitz.
I'll see about getting my old contacts in the auto industry who were more in the background back at that time. I'd already left the auto industry when this was moving forward, so I was no longer wanted to work on it. I did work with Rick in the background, connecting back, see what their interest is on moving forward. And maybe you know, Deborah, in terms of that large group. That was one of the other drivers for EDI standardization back with the gas industry back at that time frame. So I'm willing to rattle the old connections and see what I can get for that group, because they represent a very large supply chain organization.
Right.
Okay, so the consensus that I'm getting partly from the chat here is that several people seem to be in favor of just chartering a new working group to update this. There are some comments from the security people that we definitely need to address the the security related issues, use of TLS in particular, this time around. So that I think is the consensus here. And I gather the working group would be in art area rather than sec. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting a thumbs up. So that's probably it. Eric.
Yeah, I think you're misreading the chat. I see a lot of enthusiasm for doing something here, provided there's actual demonstrated interest, which we don't really have. So I don't actually read this as regional working group, but we should be above. So, I mean, obviously that's something that these can pick up, but I just, that's not really the consensus, does not seem accurate.
Okay. We'll resolve that after the meeting then. Thank you for the comment. I like it when people tell me if I'm misreading the chat, because that's easy to do. There's a lot flying by there. All right. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
And the next presentation is JSON Challenger with Anders. Anders, do you want to run the slides, or shall I?
Can you show them for me? That would be great.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Yeah, there we have it. We can go to the next slide immediately. Okay, this session was announced as JSON Challenger. It could also be Make CBOR Great Again. Pardon for that. CBOR has always been great, having more data types and better, in my opinion, than JSON, and it also supports binary encoding. So what is the problem? The problem is that CBOR sort of evolved from the embedded system market with constrained systems. And that means that tools are filled with options, making them complex to use and not very interoperable. If you are targeting JSON, we are talking about the mainstream computing platform like mobile phones, web service, and things like that. To do that, you need something simpler. And the CBOR core, as this project is called, is to create a profile that is compatible with the CBOR RFC and runs on multiple high-level platforms. Next slide, please. Okay, to get there, you need a fixed format. So you don't have any options. That means a particular CBOR item is just formatted in one way. And to make it even more strict, deterministic encoding is the default. There is no way around that. And the slide here shows as an example of what you get. You would have a set of common data types that mimic what CBOR offers, and together with high-level APIs. And the example shows a map with two entries, both having integers as keys. And you can see that you don't need a lot of code in order to create CBOR. And for the decode, you have the similar situation. And in this particular implementation, the objects are identical for encode and decode. They are sort of symmetric. This decode example shows another part of JSON, of CBOR, is that it has two versions. One is sort of the binary, that's the real on the wire CBOR, but you can also provide it in diagnostic notation, which is fine for debugging and things like that, but it can also be used in the other direction. That means you can provide CBOR in textual form. That's fine for configuration files, testing, etc., etc. And another advantage of having a high-level approach is that you can get type checking. That means that for this particular line, if the object that you're supposed to read is not a floating point value, you will get an exception. Next slide, please. Deterministic encoding is good for interoperability. That means that there is only one way of doing things, but it can also enable other application. One such application is embedded signatures. And this is essentially the opposite to COSI and UCI standards, where they embed the data inside signature containers. In using embedded signatures, the signature becomes an attribute of the message itself. The scheme for doing this is extremely simple. There is no similarity with, let's say, XML DSIG or something like that. That is one of the drivers behind this project. Next slide, please. Here you have a few links. One is the draft itself, a couple of implementations that are following the draft completely. They are reference implementation. And there is also an online service where you can test embedded signatures. Next slide, please. Right now, I am sort of alone with this project, and I am looking for alternatives for publishing. One is an independent stream, and another is an AD-sponsored item. I am also interested in finding co-editors as well as implementers, because this is a rather major thing, and being the sole implementer and editor is maybe not so serious in the long run. Well, that is about it. Short, but that is it.
Okay, thank you. The question that seems to come up in the chat here is there some reason this isn't just directly into the CBOR working group?
That's a very good question. Well, they have not expressed any idea of taking CBOR to the mainstream. In the mainstream market, you have powerful processors. That means you can do things that are impossible in constrained systems. Even basic things like sorting maps is considered too much for the constrained system, while it is absolutely nothing in a modern platform. So it's basically the interest for this kind of solution, using it for enterprise systems, digital wallets, etc., is currently not of interest.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the online or to the comments on here. Eric, go ahead.
Sorry, I just never pushed the button earlier.
Okay. Hi, Barry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Barry, you're next.
Yes, this is Barry Liebe, chair of the CBOR working group. Unfortunately, as I told the chairs of this group when they were setting up the agenda, there's a conflict with the thing-to-thing research group, and most of the CBOR people are there, not here. So this is kind of a bad situation for the decision. Yeah, it's been discussed. Stuff has been discussed in the CBOR working group, but it doesn't really belong anywhere else. So we do have a problem with this, and I think it would be bad to dispatch this to another working group. And I don't think, as Elliot said, the bar for the ISE is kind of high, so I don't think you're going to be very successful with the independent stream. But this, at the moment, the CBOR working group, you're right, doesn't want it. But that doesn't mean that venue shopping is going to be useful. I don't think we should be dealing with this at this time. We may, after the CBOR working group finishes some of the work it's already doing, we may be able to revisit it in the working group at that time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Rowan?
Hi, Rowan May. So I looked through the draft and the presentation. There's sort of three different aspects that I saw. There particular encoding requirements for CBOR that you like, some of which are already in various documents in the CBOR working group. And so having those in something that's not in the CBOR working group would definitely not be appropriate. And if you just want to be able to say, this is an additional encoding style that doesn't let you send not a number with payloads, for example. That's one of the things that's in this document. For me personally, I don't use floating point in any of the uses of CBOR that I have. So maybe having something that says, I don't do floating point at all. But having this sort of this particular choice in a continuum of choices be something that's elsewhere, that seems inappropriate. There's also general kind of API level, this is a style that we would like to have in order to make CBOR easy to use.
Yes.
That's something different. There can be some interesting stuff there, but it's having that bound up with how you do encoding, and then the third thing being basically an alternative to COSI. These are three totally different baskets, and I don't want to treat them as, this is like basically three different dispatch questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Colin?
I just wanted to say that for a long time, I have wanted something that met the type of properties that we're discussing with this. That has been impossible to do in the CBOR working group. I think there's a lot of other things, mock perhaps, that would have used CBOR if it had these properties. So I would like to see this happen somewhere. And I understand the difficulties, but the way that CBOR is currently chartered makes it impossible to actually get any progress. So I'm not willing to work on this in CBOR as it is today.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm a little bit confused. Rowan, can you still come back up to the mic? There was a comment about your split of the topics, 3 different dispatch questions, and I missed a little bit of that, and I wonder if you could reiterate it.
Yeah, so there is sort of like a API. Well, so first there's a variation on deterministic encoding. That's the first thing. The second thing is basically like an API, or like this is how we would go and use CBOR to make it easy to use for programmers. Good stuff. And the third thing is basically an alternative to COSI. 3 very different baskets, in my opinion.
Okay, I can comment on the
Please
latter.
remove me from the queue because my client just freaked out.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow up on this, on the dispatch question. What I was suggesting is that we bring this back to CBOR perhaps with a recharter after the current work that's been spinning for a while is done.
Okay. I think that sounds like the best in a nutshell summary of what to do is bring it to CBOR when they have some capacity, and perhaps with a recharter. Does that seem acceptable, Anders?
Well, the problem is that the determinism project have been going on for 2.5 years. So I am sort of getting a little bit wary about that. And the current specification is completely orthogonal to this work. it takes over, let's say, policies and stuff like that, that makes it very difficult to create another profile from it. That is an ongoing discussion, but I can't use the current deterministic profile as a foundation for this work. And it seems to go very slow, and that's why this project contains its own determinism format, but it's the same actually. It's just that the current work in the Seaborg adds a lot of things that should be left to implementers, like policies. And if determinism should be default, it's default in this profile, because that's only natural to do in a high-level implementation, while would be disaster maybe for constrained systems. That means there are two different worlds here, and they are currently not in sync, if I may say so.
Okay, well, we're kind of out of time, but I guess we kind of have a direction from this group, and get with the Seaboard chairs and the ADs to see about when this can slot in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Yazwanth is next with the agent protocol.
Hi, good morning.
Do you want me to do the slides, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can do the slides. That will be great. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, hang on a sec. Seaboard Core. Yeah, that's the right one. Title didn't quite line up. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Yashwant, and today I'm presenting an agent discovery and addressing protocol called agent://. If you go to the next slide, Jim. And the motivation of it essentially started. Next slide. Sorry. This slide is good. Yeah. So the motivation actually started off when I was integrating different AI agents and LLMs over the internet. And what I've discovered is that there are multiple protocols to interact with each agent, but there is no way of actually addressing them and discovering them automatically. And it essentially falls back on HTTP, which is more of deterministic, and agents having an agency. Usually the output is not very deterministic in nature, and hence tools would require a way to identify whether something is an AI agent which can do its own job, or a tool which would essentially give a deterministic output. And we built this in such a way that it is protocol agnostic, and existing protocols can happily work underneath it, whether it's Google's agent-to-agent protocol or Anthropic's MCP. In today's world, if somebody has to essentially talk to two agents, have to talk to each other, there's supposed to be a manual glue code that essentially comes in, which is proprietary in nature. And since this area is kind of being developed at this moment, and a lot of interest is coming out of this, I thought IETF would be a best place for building an open and interoperable agent ecosystem. If you go to the next slide, Jim. There's been a lot of activity in this space. After I've published the protocol, there's been a framework published by Rosenberg et al. In terms of coming up with an framework requirement for agents in general. There have been other work done in terms of 6G in case of building real world use cases. And there's also active discussion going on in different mailing lists called agent to agent. And there are also several side meetings that are occurring, I think, later tomorrow in this space. So there's a lot of community work going on, and the idea is about, and the ask is about, how do we structure this work, and how do we move forward, with this work in general. And next slide, please. And when it comes down to the agent protocol itself, in general, it's more of an addressing layer and not a messaging protocol. So existing protocols can actually work underneath it. It uses existing constructs that are that are standards in general, whether it's well known or in terms of addressing scheme as well. There is a reference implementation published under Agent URI. And there is also complementary work that essentially is going on in terms of Rosenberg's framework, as we discussed, and the other protocols could essentially be used underneath it. And agent : / is just addresses the addressing layer on top of it. So agent : / in general unifies the discovery, but respects the protocol diversity underneath it. Next slide, please. And the ask for dispatch is, start a new working group or a BOF for this, or whether this would be part of the existing art group. Could it be like AD sponsored, or should we need more discussion going forward on this? So the idea is to essentially open up the space, establish an open interoperable standard for the upcoming agentic web. So that is the larger idea in this area. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ted is first in the queue.
Yaswant, thanks very much for your presentation today and for the draft. I read it, and I believe that in order for this to make significant progress, it would have to be very seriously refactored to bring it to the IETF. As it is now, it's imagining an ecosystem which doesn't really exist and which works in a way that presumes some cooperation amongst players who are currently not indicating that they're all that willing to cooperate. There's also some technical detail in the draft which is simply wrong and needs to be fixed before it comes forward. So I definitely would not counsel the art ADs to sponsor it. And I suggest that if you are going for a BOF at IETF 124, that you really put that forward as a BOF which is explicitly not working group forming, because I think you need to narrow the scope of this to something that's actually building a single building block rather than imagining an entire ecosystem and the interplay among the parts of the ecosystem, because the interplay that the draft currently imagines doesn't seem to be likely to be the one that emerges. It's possible, of course. The future is full of possibility, but I would really suggest narrowing this. I would also be happy to talk with you offline about some of the URI constructs in here because I don't think they're actually correct. And I suggest you talk to Mark Nottingham or someone else about how well known is used so that we can kind of hone that in your proposal to something that might actually match the specs a little bit better. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you for the input. I'd be happy to take the discussion forward in the mailing list as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bing is next.
Thanks, Yaswant, for the very inspiring new work. And maybe a very general question for further discussion. If we use URI for addressing and agent discovery, my understanding that we assume the agent, for example, in your case, the travel agent might need to be pre-configured with a bunch of booking agent, just like human, we are aware of IETF.org, then we can locate IETF website through the HTTP URI. So that's the same assumption, or maybe we can do further steps that to allow the agent to do similar actions like people Googled something. The agent can also Google something through some mechanism. What's your thought on that? Thanks.
Yeah, the idea, thank you for the question. The idea is that agents would have agency, that means have their own decision-making capability and moving forward. So auto discovery is also something that I'm actually looking towards to be part of this frame, the entire ecosystem and framework in general. And the idea is that the existing semantic web standards could also be used for discovering the agent as to how to essentially communicate with it in terms of protocols and such. And I think now the technology is matured enough that systems and computers can auto discover these and start implementing. So the short answer to it is it will be like a user browsing a web and figuring out the service that they might require to do a specific action.
Okay, Peter is next.
Peter Castleman, chair of the WMSI working group. So within the WMSI working group, workload identity and multi-service environments, there is currently new proposals around using URIs for identifying workloads in general, of which an agent is a special kind of workload. I would encourage you maybe to bring that work to WMSI. There's a whole community of people there who are very interested in this. I do think the ability to identify agents is going to be important from an authorization and access control perspective. So, that's a potential venue. WMSI is meeting tomorrow, 14:30 to 16:30, something like that. I believe it clashes with your side meeting. So maybe you can move the side meeting, and that way we can get both sides to chat.
No.
No to what?
Moving the side meeting. There's too many people to reschedule at this point, but thank you.
Okay, Jonathan, you're next.
I'm Jonathan Rosenberg from 5.9. So I think you're well aware, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of discussion in this space. I think we've seen a literal explosion of protocols, proposals that all cover different parts of this. I have technical comments on the spec itself or the document. But I think more importantly, I think we're still in the storming and forming stage about what kind of standardization activity should be happening here. Much of it has happened outside of the IETF. The A2A and MCP protocols have been vendor-led. A2A, as you know, covers some of the functionality that's in this document. I think we still need discussion on the role of standards in this space. There is this meeting coming up. So I don't think it's a good idea for this to go to 80 sponsored. I think that'd be a very bad idea at this time. Given the earliness of standards work, I would just encourage your continued participation in the community interested in standardization in this space, starting with some of the venues you mentioned, the mailing list and the side meetings that are happening at IETF. Thank you. So I don't think this is ready for action yet.
Thank you so much. I would continue the discussion and be happy to take in all the technical inputs that you had to give. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that ends the comments there. It's sounding like sort of continue with side meetings and perhaps a non-working group forming BOF at the next meeting. And continue to develop this, but no action at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Philip Holland-Baker with JS Contact/Earl. And how do you want to do the slides, Phil?
I'll click myself if I can.
All right. I hope I can figure out how to do that.
So the basic idea here is make it really easy to exchange contact information. And by that, I mean all contact information, including public key credentials, so that if I meet up with somebody, we bump phones, I should get all their public keys for their Git, their SSH, their SMIME, all that stuff. And it should just be able to work with all my applications. And those contacts should update automatically. So if we're met in person, that contact can be marked with a thing that says, I met Fred in person. I know that these are his public keys. I think you're going to have to advance.
Okay, now.
Okay, so the basic idea is we can exchange the contacts via QR code, by a DNS handle. So put a text record in the DNS like Blue Sky is doing with AT protocol, and it will provide us a way of doing end-to-end security with any messaging system, past, future, or present. And yeah, okay, so next one. So the obvious choice for the contact format is JS Contact. I started looking at it, and when you start to look at it from the point of view of Alice is going to have 20 different applications that are cryptographically enabled, well, you want to go beyond the formats that are in JS Contact, and I'm already making some proposals to Calcify to tweak that specification a little bit. Basically, what's happened is, 10 years ago, if somebody put an open PGP key in their JS Contact, you would assume it was going to be used for email. Today, it's more likely to be used for code signing. And so we need a bit more expressibility there. Second part, which is a bit more complicated, is the encrypted authenticator resource locator. And the idea here is that if I'm going to be acquiring this contact from somebody via a QR code or a near-field communication tag or whatever, I want to capture the entire cryptographic context of that interaction. And so I want to have it so that I know that the contact I'm relying on is the same one that was the person intended to pass to me. And so this is a bit of symmetric cryptography. It's a URI with a multipurpose key. So starting off from this one, you can see we've got JS Contact. There's an authority, i.e. DNS name. And then we've got this base 32 piece coming off the end. That's the multipurpose key. And to resolve it, what you do is you first of all take the multipurpose key and you put it through a digest function and throw it at a well-known service, and that gets you how you get the bag of bits. Then you use the multipurpose key and another digest function as a key KDF, and that allows you to decrypt it. And then finally, you put the result, the plain text result, through another digest, and you check that it matches the multipurpose key. And what this gives you is a situation where the QR code and the bag of bits that it represents have precisely the same security properties. So confidentiality, integrity, the lot. And it also means that when you're passing this information via QR code, you know what you're passing. It's not an encrypted blob that you can't see and might be hurting you. So that's the most complicated piece of technology and the bit that I think is going to need some crypto review. And then finally, in order to do that update, you've got to be able to sign the contact. And since we're using JS Contact, the obvious choice for the signature protocol is Jose. And, I'm not too keen upon base 64 encoding stuff when you don't need to. And so the envelope format is simply 4 buckets of binary data with a version number in front. And that basically gives me a way of adding a signature to the update of the contact so that when Alice pulls the next version of the contact, she knows that she's getting the right one. And so, yeah, so this is basically using Jose and quick variants to delineate the buckets of binary. Okay, so my preferred dispatch outcome is dispatch to 2 working groups in that you've got the JS Contact extensions, which, well, they need to go to Calcify in the first instance, but then we need to get, Calcify is going to need input from all the other working groups that are working on application protocols. So, it's like, when you're defining a MIB, SSH needs to tell us which is the best way to put the data for an SSH contact into a JS contact. So there can be one way of doing it instead of 5 different people implementing it different ways and clients having to do heuristics and whatever. So I'd like to get some clarity there. And then the cryptographic piece is, well, the envelope format, I think, belongs very definitely in Jose. And the URL stuff is probably best there because it is crypto, but it's not a lot of crypto. And so that's it. Comments?
Okay, well, sort of one question from the group is in terms of sort of a community of interest. Have you identified some communities of interest that that will be using this?
Well, I think there's a large community of interest that's existed for a long time that's wanted to do end-to-end communications. And basically, this is making Web of Trust practical. The immediate thing that got me thinking about this was Blue Sky's AT protocol. And you've got 35 million people there who are using DNS handles to communicate. And wouldn't it be nice for there to be a way for them to use end-to-end secure messaging? So the way originally I started looking at this was I was going to write a mock-based end-to-end messaging system. And then suddenly I realized, oh, if I do it this way, they can use Signal. They can use Telegram. They can use anything that exists and is secure, and we can get that binding. So I think that there's a very large potential community that could use this. The only thing that you need in order to activate it is a contacts application.
Okay, let's get to some of the questions in the queue.
Yeah.
Braun.
As a working group chair for CalExt, yes, mailing list is Calcify, groups called CalExt. It's definitely the right place for the JS contact extensions. I see there's already been discussion on the mailing list for there. So I agree that's the right place to dispatch that part of the work.
Okay, thank you. Ecker.
I agree on the CalEx piece. I'm a little less certain about the Jose piece, but I think that's a good place to start. And I think that if they don't want it, then you probably are going to have to do some kind of BOF to establish that there's interest more globally. So I think that's definitely the place to start.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that I have is that if I release a calendar tool that does this and people start using it, well, bang has gone the opportunity to make any changes. So
right, yeah. I guess all I would say is this is still potentially. So I think that, as I said, I think it's a fine resolution. But I think I like that you've cut it up into pieces. I think that the first piece is potentially useful without URL at all. And so I think this is exactly the right cut up. And one can imagine deploying the first piece even without URL being done. So I think that's why it's useful to think about it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Pete.
Yeah, up here. As Braun said, the JS contact stuff certainly belongs in CalExt, but I think order-wise, you want to talk to Jose, figure out what's got to go on with the crypto stuff, because the JS contact stuff is actually relatively straightforward and quick. So I would say get the other stuff done, get all the ducks beak to tail, and then once you're ready to roll, then just bring it to CalExt and have them do it, because it's going to be pretty straightforward. And I don't think you're going to need to dispatch that piece of it in any particular hard way.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
Hello, Scott Flores, Cisco Systems. I would tend to agree. The biggest thing that strikes me as needing expert review is actually the crypto pieces. Calify, I do not believe, has much crypto expertise, so you need someone else to have eyes on it. And in my opinion, that should be done first. Thank you.
Yeah, if it was just the JS contact piece, I probably just wouldn't have come to dispatch and just proposed extending the working group. But I'm fairly confident that the crypto is simple. However, it's also, we like to travel in packs, and it is a cryptographic building block that I feel could be applied in many places, and it is important to get it right.
Okay, and Rowan.
Hi, I just wanted to bring to folks' attention some related work. The former team that was responsible for Keybase, they have an open source federated tool that is effectively for binding contact information, including keys. It's called Fox, F-O-K-S, and the website is foks.pub, fox.pub.
I'll take a look at it.
Okay. So thank you. Just sort of to try and summarize a little bit, it sounds like the JS contact thing is pretty straightforward. And it sounds like Jose or Abaf for the other piece.
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to go the BOF route, then I'd probably come in with a bit rather more material. There's more that we can do. Okay.
All right. Thank you. So the next one is unobtrusive end-to-end signatures with DKG.
Hi there. Can you run the slides? I think you've got that already set up.
You'd like me to run the slides?
Sure. I'm it's early in the morning for me here, so I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm presenting work that's being done with Andrew Gallagher and Kai Engert. And it's already had a little bit of discussion here in the IETF, but we wanted to make sure that more people have eyes on it. This is an email proposal. Next slide, please. So the problem that we're trying to address is that there are currently disincentives for sending signed email. We're not looking at encrypted email at all here. We're looking just at messages that are signed. And there's at least 3 different ways that your signed mail can cause you problems that you wouldn't otherwise have if you left the mail unsigned. In particular, that there are some signature formats that can't be read at all by a legacy recipient. There are other legacy recipients who will, other forms that will show up as a sort of unknown attachment, which is a user experience problem. You get people writing you back saying, sorry, I couldn't open your attachment. Please send again. And then finally, if your signature does get broken in transit, you can get a scary warning on the other end that looks worse than a simple unsigned message in the first place. So all of these things create a disincentive to actually sign your messages. And of course, being able to just uniformly sign all your messages is a user experience improvement. And it gives you room to do things like, say, expect that all of my messages are signed, which you can't currently do if you're like choosing each time you send a message. Next slide, please. So the proposal is a new format for a signed email message. The goal of the proposal is for it to be invisible to legacy mail user agents. It should appear unsigned to any existing mail user agent that knows about current cryptographic signature messages. So that'll look like a normal unsigned message. And a signature failure needs to be no scarier than an unsigned message. As a bonus, this also wraps in the most recent end-to-end header protection work that's come out of LAMPS. So automatically all header fields are covered by this end-to-end signature. Next message. Next slide. So this is how it's done in the proposal. The body of the message is actually a multi-part mixed object with a single child node. The headers all start with one or more. The headers of that top level multi-part mixed object starts with a SIG header field, and the SIG header field basically says I'm OpenPGP, and here's the signature object. And it signs everything else that's there. And the headers from the original message are also copied in the same way that the header protection work does that. Next slide, please. Just to consider, this is currently speccing it only for OpenPGP. That's what the authors are used to working on. That's what we've been doing. And it's only for signed messages, as I mentioned before. For encrypted messages, even encrypted and signed messages, we expect the existing standards to continue to work. Next slide. I think that's all we've got. Oh yeah, just to mention about the dispatch outcomes. Next slide, please. It has already come up in the OpenPGP working group. It looks like there could be a small working group poll and a recharter to include it in OpenPGP, but it's possible that it belongs in LAMPS or Mailmate or somewhere else. So Mark, I see in your message here, it seems dangerous to teach users to treat signature failures as no scarier than I assume it means unsigned messages. And Chris, I see the same concern. I want to point out that if you're an adversary and you're tampering with messages, the easiest thing you can possibly do is simply strip a message signature. So you're not actually creating any real defense by showing unsigned messages, by showing broken signatures as a scary thing. This has actually already come up. This was discussed heavily in LAMPS during the most recent work on end-to-end mail guidance. So if you have an issue with that, it's run a little bit late. The end-to-end mail guidance document that came out of LAMPS actually explicitly says that that should generally be the case. The advantage of the new format here is we can actually put that in the spec that you should not be showing warnings that are scarier than unsigned message warnings. I want to note, if you think unsigned messages are scary, you can put warnings on those messages too, but most people are not prepared to do that right now. However, if an unsigned message does produce a scary warning, it's perfectly fine to put a scary warning on a broken signature of this type. But an adversary can easily strip a message signature if they want to. So this is end-to-end. It is not, the DKIM tends to be done at the service level, not at the individual sender and receiver level. So this is, the idea here is this is done by the actual sender themselves, and that's what distinguishes it from DKIM.
So we have a
yep.
list of people in the queue.
Please.
So let's let them get on. Okay, so Mark. Okay, maybe Barry.
Hi, this is Barry Lieba. Yeah, I agree that there may be some aspects of this that overlap with DKIM 2 and could merge well with that. But the whole point of DKIM is that it's done by the service provider. It's signed by the service provider, and this is signed by the end user, the sending user. So it's there's a different focus. Mailmate seems the right thing to me, but we need to the core of this is the format in the message. The cryptography is not at issue, I think, in general here. So we do need to make sure we get the right security people into Mailmate if we put it there when this is being worked on. These sorts of things are a little difficult if we stick it in a security, like in LAMPS, we don't have the mail people there. So I think Mailmate is probably the right answer, but we do need to do a little more analysis of whether DKIM could have some aspect of picking this up.
Okay, Paul.
Hi, Paul Wouters. I'm AD for the OpenPGP working group. I would be a little unhappy if we recharter this into the OpenPGP working group, because I feel that this is mostly related to packaging OpenPGP compatible in mail formats and in mail headers. And I do believe that's much more of a mail problem than it is an OpenPGP problem. So I think it doesn't really belong in OpenPGP. Like We could look at emergency. If no one else takes it, maybe we have to do it there, but I would really strongly prefer to go elsewhere.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Pete?
Yeah, I don't think DKIM has anything to do with this. This is end-to-end, clearly not domain-based signing. Mailmate would be okay if this is relatively close to done, because Mailmate's not supposed to bite off big chunks. But I was shockingly amazed that I took the example in the draft and fed it to my current mail client, and it dealt with it perfectly happily. I didn't actually expect that to work. So this may be pretty much ready to go. And I think Mailmate would be reasonable. Like I said, before you bring something to Mailmate, at least let all of the usual mail suspects give it a sniff and say, yeah, that looks pretty close to done. But I don't think there's a whole lot of work to be done here. It looks really pretty straightforward.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Brian?
My apologies first, I haven't read the draft. I would disagree with Pete. I think there might be something to do with DKIM here. And the reason is that with DKIM 2, each hop is signing something saying what it got from the previous hop, and you could make the sender be the first hop of that in a way that I think would make sense. So it's worth looking at that. But otherwise, I agree. If we don't do that, Mailmate would be the right place. So it's going to be one of Mailmate or DKIM. Given that Pete's a DKIM working group chair and not keen on it, that's probably a reason. Unfortunately, I think Ken has already left for today. He had to run off to the airport to send someone back, so he's not here for this as the work group chair for Mailmate. But I think we could take that discussion offline, and one of those places would be the right place.
So just to comment on the DKIM question here, the authors of this draft this actually came up originally in an OpenPGP email summit. So if this moves into DKIM and becomes all DKIM keys and there's no OpenPGP in it, it actually will not do what the authors are looking to do. So anyway, I'm definitely interested to understand more about the overlap with DKIM, but yeah, making it an entirely non-open PGP mechanism seems a little bit strange, given where we're coming from with it. Anyway.
If I could hop back in for a second, I think it would be more that the DKIM would understand this and would consider it to be the first hop, and hence something that it needed to be able to reverse changes back to, because without that, if the first hop could then break this signature and not understand it. So I think having DKIM to understand this would make sense.
Got it. Interesting. Thanks.
Okay, so thanks, Daniel. So I think that decision is to send it to Mailmate. Is that you're comfortable with that? Okay with that?
That works. That works for me. If Mailmate folks are interested, I will poke around over there and see how that goes.
Okay. Reach out to them and see how it goes. Thanks.
I'll throw in my own comment here that almost seems like there are enough issues that we should have a side meeting to just kind of work through some of the similarities and so forth, rather than trying to burden the entire working group with that at first.
Okay, next. Who's next? So next is Merkle Tree. Okay, Merkle Tree. There you go.
This button or?
Hold on.
Turn on the clicker.
Ah, all right. Well, while the clicker's turning. Oh, hello there.
Try. Yeah, there you go.
All right, great. Okay, so this is Merkle Tree certificates. It's some work by myself, Devin O'Brien, Bas Westervan, Luc Valenta, and Filippo Valsorda. And I only have 5 minutes, so let's get going. All right, so the problem is that PKIs, particularly those that use CT, are getting larger. Post-quantum signature schemes are huge. Even the smallest MLDSA is 30 times the size of the signature algorithms that we like today. This means that certificate log entries get larger because they contain currently a public key and a signature, and that scales the costs of the entire transparency ecosystem, from log operators to monitors looking for misissued certs and so on. It also means the TLS handshake gets larger because we need to carry not just one signature from the CA, but also several signatures from logs. And if you all did the ML-Chem transition and saw a latency hit, we're just getting started here. This is even larger. But on the plus side, since we have to transition to a post-quantum PKI anyway, this is the right time to start thinking about what design decisions we want to revisit given this extremely distressing reality. So a bunch of us have been working on this Merkle tree certs project for a bit. This is, if you've seen a previous iteration, this is a new incarnation of the same idea, which we've been kind of jokingly calling the photosynthesis. The draft name says TLS, but that's because it was originally targeted as a TLS specific thing, and now this is sort of a general certificate format. But the core idea is still, if we integrate transparency into the issuance process directly, specifically by moving the Merkle tree construction from the logs to the CA, a lot of interesting things fall out. So real quick, today, when you issue a certificate, the CA signs something and then logs the result. And we're just going to flip the order of that. Now, each CA runs their own issuance log, which contains just what they have issued. And then rather than signing the individual entries, you sign the tree itself. So like a signed tree head in CT parlance, or you can sign sort of subtrees as well. And this immediately gives us our log size savings because the log entries no longer have signatures. The signature, you only need to keep track of one signature at the very top to get non-repudiation for the entire tree. We can also, by integrating it into the verification process, replace the keys with a hash, and now our logs do not scale with post-quantum at all. And so now we have these small logs, but you still need to have some other parties also attest and that the log was not like, was append only and durably served and such. So we have what used to be logs are now mirrors who mirror the contents and then sign those same tree heads once they have also picked up that current log state. And through all that, we can then finally package together as a certificate to send to relying parties. The TBS certificate or information in the certificate is just the entry, and the signature is whatever the client needs to believe in the entry. In particular, it's an inclusion proof up to some point in the log, and signatures from trusted cosigners that attest to that log state. And then as a final trick, where we get the TLS size savings, for up-to-date relying parties, we can pre-distribute some information about the tree, and then as a result, you don't actually need the co-signatures because they've been taken care of ahead of time. And you only need the inclusion proof, and it turns out one Merkle tree inclusion proof is smaller than even one post-quantum signature, let alone 3, because our signatures are that bad. All right, so what are the pieces here? The draft that we're currently chewing on is sort of the core Merkle tree certificates protocol bit. So this has the X509 format. It's got the issuance log structure that the format is sort of constructed relative to, and it's got some integration with TLS and ACME for how to negotiate these certs and so on. Then sort of separate from that, you've got the transparency ecosystem. So what in CT today is the log serving protocols, the monitors and such. There's been a lot of work done on the CT ecosystem around something called static CT or tiled transparency logs, where a lot of these sort of like primitives came from, and so we're just gonna go plop them in. And then, as usual, the root programs then maintain lists of trusted cosigners, just like they maintain lists of trusted CAs and logs today. So how to dispatch this? There's a lot of stuff going on here. The center of this particular draft is the X509 certificate. Like everything else is sort of in service of that, and that is what we are ultimately trying to produce. So it makes sense. So lamps might be reasonable, or at least in terms of like where folks have X509 expertise. At the same time, that previous picture was a little bit larger than this snippet. So something broader scope might make sense. Wherever it goes, I think one thing we also need to figure out is what is the scope of this work at IETF, because what you don't prescribe is as important as what you do prescribe. And something we've sort of learned from the CT ecosystem is that since the transparency details, like how you do monitors and such, don't actually impact TLS and X509 interop, it's useful to sort of keep them separate to sort of capture that like one side can sort of evolve without having to coordinate with the other. In particular, there's been a lot of work in the transparency space that it would be good to just sort of be able to include. Yeah, but you know, this is as usual, early work. Feedback on scope or anything else is welcome on lists here. Go find me this week or whatever else.
Okay, Philip.
I really like this work, but this is not limited. This is not lamps.
It does rather stretch that L.
Yeah. I think that we need a working group for it. And I think I would go through the BOF phase so that we could work out what parts of the problem are going to be done in, really what you're proposing to do is a whole new PKI. Let's face it. So yeah, it's going to need a working group, and we're going to need to work out what the scope of that working group and charter appropriately. So I think a BOF.
Okay, we have a long list of people waiting in the queue. So, Ecker.
Hey, David. Can you talk briefly about how you see the interaction between this and the KT, the search server KT draft that that Macmillan and Dennis Jackson, I think one other suggested?
Yeah, so that work, I have not read the most recent iteration of it, but that work is mostly, if I recall, that work does not actually do anything about the sort of certificate construction. And so as a result, the logs still get larger. It does pick up sort of there's some prefix tree stuff you get from KT. There's actually some work on the CT ecosystem to sort of do that as an index on the side. That might be a little bit more like easy to deploy in terms of like not biting off everything at once. There's some revocation stuff that like, I think for the web PKI, we've generally considered short-lived certs to be the path here. At least for now, the limiting factor is how fast you can get the servers to update things. And so, basically any kind of like revocation story where the server provides you with information is going to be like, that's one of the limiting factors. It's possible when we finally get further down then like, churning the logs will be the limiting factor or something else. That would be a good problem to have. So I think this is targeting different problems, and it's possible that like, at some point, like if the ideas from the other one also get usable, then things can be smushed together or whatever else. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I think Philip's right. I think that this is not limited and would need a BOF. I think, and the reason I ask about the other draft is the question is would that need to get pulled into the scope of said working group if it were formed. But I think the next step is a BOF in any case, and this does seem like interesting. This seems like worthy work that is worthy of a BOF.
Okay. Thanks. That's Dennis.
Hi, Dennis Jackson. Yeah, I think there's some really good work here. I think absolutely a BOF would be the way to go. There's a lot of scope and different bits to figure out. I don't think sort of going to LAMPS would be right, and I don't think LAMPS would probably give us a fast progress on anything. They're pretty busy with the private keys at the moment. With the RevTrans work, I think that's going to be discussed later in the week. I sort of see that as similar in scope to this. I don't imagine that work could progress without a BOF or similar. Maybe that would be the place to talk about the different perspectives there and that kind of thing. But yeah, this looks great.
Okay, thanks. For the rest of people, please be brief. We're running out of time. So Tommy.
Tommy Polyapple. Echoing what people said, I think this is a BOF more than going into an existing working group. And I guess the only thing I'll add on top of that is, I think we've gotten good in some groups at having relatively focused, somewhat short-lived technical working groups. I think we could, let's work on a working group charter that's going to be proposed in the BOF that is not going to try to boil the ocean, but focus on a very particular mechanism here.
Okay. Yeah, I think trying to solve every PKI problem at once is going to be like, we'll never get anywhere. So I think probably the different PKI projects can get different BOFs, so we can sort it out later. It's I think as long as we sort of keep moving forward.
Russ.
Hi. Yes, I agree. This isn't a limited thing, but nothing in LAMPS has turned out to be a limited thing. The second point I'd like to make is the people that you need looking at certificates are there in LAMPS, and we need to make sure that those people participate regardless of where it goes.
Richard.
Richard Barnes. Yeah, I think want to kind of plus one the idea that this is not LAMPS, this is not incremental work for an existing working group. I think this is a big enough, interesting enough problem that it merits getting a charter like nicely scoped so we can capture like the right big scope. And so I think BOF is probably the right answer here, but also getting a mailing list started and having the right discussions to lead up to the BOF. I think the question Ecker raised of combining this with KT is an interesting one. I don't think it's necessarily the right answer for this. I would also pull into scope some of the key consistency stuff that like OHI and PPM have worried about. Like if we have, it's potential that there's some stuff where might be some common stuff to work out here. I think it's like an off chance that any of this stuff actually meshes together, but I think it's worth like at least thinking about and coming to an answer about. But yeah, it's very supportive of doing BOF in this.
I think given the tendency of things to creep in scope, it's probably better to merge things afterwards rather than before. Like I can sort of see where the like vague similarities come from, but it's just, you know, it's easier to do that once we have an idea of what each thing is.
Okay, David.
Just wanted to echo Russ's point that the certificate people are in LAMPS. I don't think anyone is suggesting that like a full log go to LAMPS. What needs to go to LAMPS at some point, and regardless of a BOF or WG, will probably end up in LAMPS, is there's an X509 signature algorithm in this draft, and I don't see that not going to LAMPS at some point. So we could agree to send that to LAMPS and then determine that the rest of this is out of scope or relevant to the transparency ecosystem, especially given, you know, the limited kind of definition of the X509 LAMPS group, right? So I don't think anyone wants to boil the ocean in LAMPS.
Okay, thank you. I think that decision is just to go for a BOF, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next.
Next one is Wenting Chen.
Yeah. Is Wenting remote?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So I share my screen. Okay. Hi everyone, this is Wenting from Alipay. The proposal about today is private site intersection based on ECDH. Next page. So the motivation is that there is some realistic user cases required for this PSI. So this is an example that people, there is a group of people who have Twitter a lot, and there is another bunch of users who like video games. So they want to find their common users who Twitter a lot and also like video games. So when they find out their common site, they don't want each other to know any other additional informations. So a protocol is required to enable two or more parties to identify. To identify their overlapping data elements while still reserving the confidential.
Sorry.
Okay. And then next page. So here is that there's a bunch of PSI technologies. So for example, the Diffie-Hellman, the Hashi, the OT, the VOLT, the VOLE based, etc. So we have compiled different PSI algorithms, and then find out that the Diffie-Hellman based data, they can achieve this technology is mature, and the computation, the communication is also acceptable. And the ECDH PSI has been widely deployed by a lot of companies. For example, Alipay, ByteDance, and Bank China, and etc. They can be utilized for the fraud detection, card activity and some coupons. And then there's a lot of realistic user cases. So in generally, if each party holds 1 billion 1 billion data size, then half a day can finish the ECDH PSI. And next page. So this is a quick overview of the ECDH protocols that two parties shared some masked informations. So if the elements is equal, then they can find the same. Then each party can find the same point. Well, if their original data is different, then other parties cannot recover the original data. So in this with two round trip information exchange, then two parties can find out their common site. Next page. So this proposal we have submitted to PPM, that's Privacy Preserving Measurement Working Group, since IETF 121, where there's an initial proposal and also the code is open sourced. And then we received, after two IETF meetings, we received a lot of detail and valuable comment suggestion, especially thanks to Thomas Pauling from CFRG and Crystal Patton from PPM. So this proposal we have been discussed in PPM working group interim meetings, where the chair says that believe this is a highly promising and worthwhile technology, but it falls outside the charter of PPM. So next. So in this time, we are trying to find that can dispatch help us to find a appropriate working group for this private site intersection discussion.
Martin.
Wow, it's a long way down. Martin Thompson. So I guess this is interesting work. I've looked at this in the past. You didn't mention MPC. We have managed to do set intersection on a similar size data sets in less time using MPC. So I'm kind of surprised at your numbers, by the way. They seem a little slow. But the basic technology here is pretty solid, and it's old tech. It's now, what, close to 30, 40 years old. So that's no surprise. I think that there's probably work to do here, but I'd like to ask the question that everyone needs to answer here. Who's likely to use the output of the work that's here?
So your problem is that who will use this? So our proposal is that to generate a protocol. The output is a protocol to realize two companies to perform the PSI protocol. So if we have this document, then no matter which companies they use this protocol, they can realize PSI. So it's an interoperability. It try to solve the interoperability problem.
That's not specifically the question I was asking. I was more asking which specific two companies or more might use this output. Now, obviously, the company that you work for, perhaps.
Yes. So in there is some banks and some internet companies, and also some academics institutions. So concretely, like China of Bank, ByteDance, and maybe Google and Alipay. Yeah, and also we have Visa also use this protocol. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great if those entities could identify themselves and support this, but otherwise I think this is probably the right outcome here. It's relatively straightforward work. I don't know that it's big enough to demand a BOF, and the scope of a working group charter could be kept relatively tight. I'm almost tempted to suggest a rechartering of PPM for this, but I know that they're kind of overloaded with the work that they're doing. So probably a new working group is best.
Sorry, again, Martin, are you saying a new worker or a BOF for this, or what is it again?
I'm suggesting that perhaps this is small enough that if the work is put in to develop a charter that's tight and relatively constrained, a BOF might be skipped in this case, provided that we can get the demonstration of interest from enough people to sort of show that that would be successful.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Ecker?
Yeah. So the demonstration of interest we require is one of interoperable use here. It's like Google, for instance, runs this password check thing, but doesn't require interoperability because it's just like Chrome talking to Google. So I think what we need to hear is from a set of companies which want to have a protocol where they talk to each other. Having reviewed this document, I think probably this needs to be cut up into pieces, actually. There is a cryptographic core, which is describing the PSI scheme. And that probably, I think, probably belongs in CFRG. As has been in the chat, it's also not clear that this precise scheme has the properties we want due to the quantum computing questions. And separately, there may or may not be a protocol that uses the PSI scheme to actually pop out PSI results. And I think that protocol, the protocol you designed, seems like one choice, but probably not the choice I think people are going to want to make because it's very tightly bound to the channel. And my experience is people always want to have HTTP binding for these things. So I think that would have to go a different place. And that would require, I think, a larger demonstration of interest in our ability than just the CFRG piece.
So we are having difficulty hearing you, Ecker. So are you saying send this to CFRG? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying there are two.
Maybe summarize what you think.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm saying there are two pieces. One piece is the core PSI protocol, this ECGH stuff. And the other is the actual protocol that carries the PSI stuff. And those could go different places. And the first one, I think, we said to CFRG, but then they should rightly ask, does anybody want an IETF? And so, but you don't you want to separate them out. And I think that having read the protocol, I think protocol is going to need some changes much more than the crypto core is going to.
Yeah.
So just
yeah.
So
It's
I
not,
think.
Go ahead.
I think Shuping was going to summarize.
Okay. Yeah, it's not close to me. Like, what's that? Yeah, so it's not clear to me exactly at this point what's the direction, at least from the chair perspective. There was suggestions that this could worth a BOF, and Ecker has a different opinion, but I haven't heard too many people talking about this, so I maybe something that we can discuss offline and see what's the best way of proceeding with this one. But to me, at least at this point, it's not clear what's the direction here.
Yeah, yes, sure. We can discuss offline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I quickly summarize this session. The first one, open cloud mesh, would be a working group forming BOF. And the second one, to update the RFC 4130, probably a BOF, and just to make sure the expertise and the people who are willing to work. And the third one, the CBOR, and probably to work with the CBOR chairs and ADs, and probably to see the possibilities with the CBOR rechartering. And the fourth one about the agent protocol. Probably next time, I just keep working on that. Next time it's a non-working group forming BOF. And then the JS contact. So for the JS contact part to go to the Calyx working group, and but then the crypto part is Jose or above. And then the end-to-end email signature is the mail amendment or asset meeting. And for the SAC topics, the first one, Merkle tree above with a narrow down scope and probably a mailing list before the BOF. And the last one is currently is not clear and more offline discussions.
Okay, and we've got very limited time for an art area session. So Andy's coming up, and Ori. Maybe we'll step aside or something like that. Take the floor mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So we wanted to give the art area. We had an art area virtual interim 2 months ago, I think. But we wanted to give you all time for open mic. So if you have any questions about art or anything you want to bring forward, now's the time to do it. And while you're trying to decide that, I'm going to let you know that we had a presentation at the interim on JSON structure, and we are planning on having a virtual interim BOF on that. So open mic, anybody? Now's your time to ask questions of Ori.
You can come find us in the hallways also. We're always happy to chat. So. All right. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I guess 10 minutes was enough. Okay, so that closes the dispatch session. Thank you all for coming and have a good week.